Hi everyone, Olivia here. And you know what? Something absolutely wonderful happened to me today, something that just filled me with so much joy I have to share it. I bumped into an old friend. Seriously, an old friend I hadn't seen in years, probably close to 5, if I had to guess. We were at the farmer's market, the air buzzing with the happy chatter of Saturday shoppers and the smell of fresh baked bread hanging in the air. I was looking at some gorgeous sunflowers when I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned around and honestly, it felt like magic. There she was, beaming at me, and a wave of warmth just rushed over me. We hugged, and it was like no time had passed at all. We chatted for ages, catching up on everything, laughing and reminiscing. It was such a lovely, unexpected reunion, the kind that makes you believe in serendipity. You will not believe what happened next. We discovered we live in the same neighborhood now. How amazing is that? So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. Remember, there's a new video every day focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just stumble into things. Like, you have absolutely no intention of doing something, and then bam, you're right in the middle of it? That's exactly how I ended up participating in the Great Minds Trivia Night at the local community center. It started innocently enough. I was at the library, returning a stack of books, the usual, that teetered precariously in my arms, threatening to avalanche at any second. I'm a notorious book hoarder, what can I say? The air smelled that wonderful mix of old paper and dust, and the afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows, creating these beautiful, golden pools of light on the floor. It was peaceful, Anyway, as I was heading out, a flyer caught my eye. Bright yellow, with an oversized question mark and the words, Great Minds Trivia Night, splashed across it. Usually, I'd just keep walking. Trivia? Not my thing. I'm more of a curl up with a good book kind of person, not a rapid-fire recall of obscure facts kind. But this flyer, it had this cartoon brain wearing a tiny crown, and I swear it winked at me. Okay, maybe not literally winked. But it had this energy. And beneath the cartoon, in smaller print, were the magic words, free refreshments. Now, I'm not usually swayed by free food, but that day, I had skipped lunch, fueled solely by the caffeine fumes of a lukewarm latte. So, free refreshments? It sounded like a siren song. I grabbed a flyer, tucked it into my bag, already overflowing with library books, obviously, and thought, why not? It might be fun. Famous last words, right? Fast forward a week, and there I was, standing awkwardly in the community center gymnasium, feeling like I'd walked onto the set of a low-budget game show. The room was buzzing with nervous energy. Teams huddled together, whispering strategies, flipping through dog-eared notebooks. The air smelled faintly of popcorn and disinfectant, a truly bizarre combination. Garish fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on everything. I had reluctantly agreed to join my friend, Sarah, and her team. She's one of those people who knows everything. Like, everything. Capital cities of obscure countries, the names of all the US presidents in chronological order, even the periodic table. You name it, she knows it. I, on the other hand, could barely remember what I had for breakfast. Sarah introduced me to the rest of the team, a retired history professor with a twinkle in his eye, a high school science whiz who looked about 12, and a woman who claimed to be the reigning champion of the local crossword puzzle competition. I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. I was definitely the weak link. The quizmaster, a man named Bob with an impressively booming voice and a collection of truly awful puns, took the stage. The room went silent. Then, the games began. The first few rounds were a blur. Questions on history, geography, science, it was like being back in school, only the stakes were somehow higher. My team, thankfully, was amazing. They fired off answers with lightning speed, occasionally glancing at me with a mixture of amusement and pity. I managed to contribute a few vague guesses, most of which were met with polite silence. You know that feeling when you're trying really hard to be helpful but you're just not? Yeah, that was me. But then, something unexpected happened. The category was literature. My territory. Suddenly, I felt a surge of confidence. Bob boomed out the question, "Who wrote the novel, Wuthering Heights?" Before anyone else on my team could even open their mouths, I blurted out, "Emily Bronte." A beat of silence. Then, the history professor smiled, the science whiz looked impressed, and Sarah actually gave me a high five. "See," she whispered, "I told you you'd know some of them." For the rest of the literature round, I was unstoppable. I knew authors, characters, plot points. It felt amazing. The knot in my stomach unraveled, replaced by a warm glow of, well, I guess you could call it triumph. I was contributing. I was valuable. I was a trivia god? Okay, maybe not a god. But definitely a demigod. A minor deity of literary knowledge, perhaps. The next round was pop culture, which, thankfully, I also held my own in. We even correctly identified a surprisingly obscure 90s boy band based solely on a snippet of one of their songs. Don't ask me how. It was a moment of divine inspiration, I swear. But then came the dreaded, science, round. Oh, science. My nemesis. I still have nightmares about high school chemistry. The questions flew thick and fast, about atoms and molecules and things I vaguely remembered learning about but couldn't quite grasp. My team, however, seemed undeterred. The science whiz was in his element, practically vibrating with excitement. Then came a question about, well, I honestly can't even remember what it was about. Something involving physics and velocity and gravity? I just stared blankly, my mind a swirling void of scientific ignorance. Suddenly, in a moment of sheer panic, I blurted out, "Elephants." The entire room went silent. Even Bob, the pun-loving quizmaster, seemed speechless. My team stared at me, their expressions ranging from bewildered amusement to utter mortification. "Elephants?" Sarah finally managed to squeak out. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I don't know," I stammered, my cheeks burning. It was the first thing that came to mind. The science whiz, bless his heart, tried to salvage the situation. "Maybe she's thinking about the gravitational pull on elephants," he offered weakly. Bob, after recovering from his initial shock, let out a booming laugh. "Well, that's certainly a creative answer," he said, shaking his head. "Unfortunately, it's not the correct one." The rest of the quiz went by in a blur of embarrassment and whispered apologies to my team. We didn't win, obviously. But we didn't come in last either, which I considered a minor victory. Afterwards, as we were leaving, Sarah put her arm around me and squeezed. "Hey," she said, "at least you made it memorable, right? No one's going to forget the elephant incident anytime soon." She was right, of course. And you know what? Even though I was mortified at the time, looking back, I can't help but laugh. It was a humbling experience, sure. But it also reminded me that sometimes, it's okay to be wrong, to be silly, to not know all the answers. And hey, at least I got some free refreshments out of it. So, you know, silver linings and all that. And that, my friend, is the story of the day I participated in a quiz, a day filled with unexpected twists, moments of brief glory, and, of course, elephants. What can I say? It's a story I'll be telling for years to come. Maybe even at the next trivia night. Who knows? Maybe I'll even brush up on my physics. Just in case. You never know when elephant-related gravity questions might come up. You just never know. Okay, so, grab a cuppa, settle in, because this story is a saga. It all revolves around a handmade card. Sounds simple, right? Oh, honey, you have no idea. This wasn't just any card. This was a Mount Everest of card making. A Sistine, Chapel of Paper and Glue. It was for my Nana's 80th birthday. And Nana, well, Nana's a force of nature. She's got a laugh that could shake the foundations of a house and a heart bigger than, well, bigger than her prize-winning pumpkin. You get the picture. A generic, shop-bought card simply wouldn't do. So, I decided, several weeks before the big day, with the confidence of someone who'd clearly never attempted anything remotely crafty, that I was going to make her the most spectacular, personalized, heart-meltingly amazing card the world had ever seen. Ha! Famous last words, am I right? My initial vision was grand. I pictured a pop-up extravaganza. Think cascading glitter, miniature Nana figurines, don't ask, and a tiny, working gramophone playing Happy Birthday. I was delusional, clearly. The first hurdle, predictably, was materials. My craft cupboard, which I'd imagined brimming with possibilities, contained precisely 3 sheets of construction paper, 2 neon pink, 1 alarmingly orange, a half-used glue stick that smelled vaguely of old socks, and a single, slightly rusty pipe cleaner. This wasn't going to cut it. So, off I went to the craft store. Now, I've never been one for excessive shopping. But this place, it was like Aladdin's cave for crafters. Ribbons and buttons and feathers and sequins, oh my. I wandered around, mesmerized, touching everything, picking up sparkly things, putting them down, picking up different sparkly things. You know, the usual. I ended up leaving with a bag overflowing with enough supplies to build a small, glittery kingdom. There was embossed paper, pearl-headed pins, calligraphy pens, iridescent paints, and, because why not? A miniature flock of felt birds. I had no concrete plan, but I figured I'd wing it. Pun intended, of course. The first few attempts were, well, let's just say there's a reason I didn't pursue a career in paper engineering. My pop-up mechanism popped down. The miniature Nana figurines looked more like deranged garden gnomes. And the less said about the gramophone, the better. It involved a lot of origami and a lot of frustration. It ended up looking like a crumpled paper hat. I was about ready to throw in the towel, admit defeat, and buy a perfectly acceptable card from the local supermarket. But then, I looked at the picture of Nana on my desk, her eyes twinkling, her smile infectious. And I knew I couldn't give up. So, I took a deep breath, cleared the glitter-bombed disaster area that was my dining table, and started again. This time, I decided to keep it simple. Elegant, even. I chose a beautiful, creamy cardstock as my base. Then, I carefully cut out some flowers from a sheet of patterned paper, remembering the time Nana taught me how to press flowers when I was little. We'd spend hours collecting wildflowers, carefully placing them between sheets of newspaper and heavy books. The smell of the dried flowers and old paper still takes me right back. I arranged the paper flowers on the card, adding a few delicate pearl-headed pins for a touch of sparkle. Then, I picked up a calligraphy pen, my hand trembling slightly, and started to write. I didn't plan what to say. I just let the words flow. I wrote about her laugh, her warmth, how she always knew how to make me feel better, no matter what. How her hugs felt like coming home. As I wrote, I realized something. It wasn't about the glitter or the pop-ups or the miniature, slightly terrifying figurines. It was about the feeling. The love. The connection. The card was just a vessel for that. You know what I mean? The final touch was a tiny, felt bird, perched on the edge of the card. It wasn't perfect, but it was me. And I knew Nana would love it. The day of her party arrived. I was so nervous. What if she didn't like it? What if she thought it was childish? What if she preferred a shop-bought card with a generic message inside? I needn't have worried. When she opened the card, her eyes filled with tears. She didn't say anything at first. She just held it, tracing the outlines of the paper flowers, her fingers brushing over the felt bird. Then, she looked up at me, her smile brighter than any glitter, and pulled me into a hug. "This is the most beautiful card I've ever received," she whispered. And you know what? In that moment, covered in glitter, surrounded by discarded paper scraps and a half-finished origami gramophone, I felt triumphant. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't professional. But it was made with love. And sometimes, that's all that matters, right? The funny thing is, years later, Nana still has that card. It's a bit faded now, the edges are worn, the felt bird is a little fluffier than it used to be. But it's still there, tucked away in a special box with her other treasured keepsakes. And every time I see it, I'm reminded of that chaotic, glitter-filled week, the frustration, the laughter, and the overwhelming feeling of love that went into making it. It reminds me that the most precious gifts aren't always the flashiest or the most expensive, but the ones that come from the heart. So, yeah, that's the story of the card. A little messy, a little chaotic, but a whole lot of love. Now, whose turn is it to make the tea? I'm parched after all that crafting talk. Hey everyone. Never stop moving forward. Every new day brings new opportunities. I love that thought, don't you? It reminds me that learning a language, especially English, isn't a race, it's a journey. Some days you'll sprint ahead, other days you'll stroll, and that's perfectly okay. Every single step you take, every word you learn, brings you closer to fluency. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. You know what can really help? Reading stories aloud. Imagine yourself making a cup of coffee in the morning and reading a short story out loud. Or perhaps during your evening walk, you narrate a children's book to the trees. It might feel a bit silly at first, but trust me, it's a powerful way to improve your pronunciation and speaking flow without even realizing you're practicing. Plus, it's so much fun. Telling stories smoothly, expressing our thoughts just as they flow in our minds. That's something we all strive for, right? I understand that feeling of having the words in your head but struggling to get them out in English. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? It's totally normal. Remember, each time you try, you're building your confidence and getting closer to that smooth, effortless flow. And you know what? I was thinking about this the other day while explaining some English phrases to my neighbor's little daughter. She was so fascinated by the words and the way they sounded. It made me realize how much explaining something to someone else reinforces your own understanding. Have you tried teaching someone else English phrases? It can be such a rewarding experience, both for you and the person you're helping. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. Okay, so grab a cuppa, settle in, because this story takes me back. It's about the time I got a new bicycle. Sounds simple enough, right? But trust me, it's a whole saga. You see, I wasn't just getting a bike. I was entering a new era. Well, you'll see. I must have been about 10, maybe 11. That age where the world felt enormous and full of possibility, you know. And my world, at that time, revolved around our little cul-de-sac. It was asphalt heaven. All the kids would be out there, roller skating, playing hopscotch, and, of course, showing off their bikes. Now, I had a bike. Sort of. It was this ancient, rusty thing my older brother had outgrown. The handlebars were wobbly, the seat was ripped, and one of the pedals was perpetually threatening to fall off. It was less a bicycle, more a mechanical hazard. It made this clunk, clunk, clunk sound with every rotation, like a tired old horse dragging its hooves. Humiliating doesn't even begin to cover it. Trying to keep up with the other kids was like trying to win a race with a tortoise with a loose wheel. So, you can imagine the longing, the desperate yearning I felt for a real bicycle. A shiny, new one, with gears that clicked smoothly, and brakes that actually worked. I'd spend hours gazing at the bikes in the shop window downtown, picturing myself gliding down the street, the wind in my hair, the envy of all my friends. I talked about it constantly. My parents probably thought I was obsessed. Well, I was. Then, my birthday rolled around. I remember waking up that morning, a nervous flutter in my stomach. I rushed downstairs, heart pounding. And there it was, in the middle of the living room, gleaming under the sunlight streaming through the window. A bicycle. A real bicycle. It was bright red, the color of a fire truck. The chrome handlebars sparkled. The tires were thick and black and looked like they could conquer any terrain. It even had a little bell. A bell. My old bike didn't even have a bell. I think I stood there for a full minute, just staring, my mouth slightly agape. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. My parents were watching me, smiling. My dad gave me a wink and said, "Well, what are you waiting for? Give it a try." I remember the feeling of pure, unadulterated joy that surged through me as I climbed onto that bike. It felt right, like it was made for me. The seat was just the right height. The handlebars were perfectly positioned. I pushed off, and, oh, the smoothness. The effortless glide. It was like flying. No more clunking, no more wobbling. Just pure, exhilarating speed. I spent the rest of that day riding around the cul-de-sac, showing off my new wheels. All the other kids were impressed, even the older ones who usually ignored me. I felt like a champion, a speed demon, a cycling prodigy. It was, without a doubt, the best birthday ever. But, you know, the story doesn't end there. Because getting the bike was just the beginning. It was the catalyst for a whole new level of adventure. Suddenly, my world expanded beyond the cul-de-sac. With my shiny red bike, I felt like I could go anywhere. One sunny afternoon, a few weeks after my birthday, I decided to explore. I told my mom I was going for a ride, and I set off, pedaling faster and further than I ever had before. I rode past the park, past the school, past the familiar houses of my neighborhood. I was venturing into uncharted territory. It was thrilling. I remember the smell of freshly cut grass, the sound of birds chirping in the trees, the feeling of the warm sun on my face. The world felt alive, vibrant, full of possibilities. I was no longer just a kid on a bike. I was an explorer, an adventurer, a pioneer. And then, I saw it. A hill. A big, steep hill. It loomed before me, a challenge, a test of my newfound cycling prowess. I hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing my mind. Could I do it? Should I even try? But then, I thought of my old clunker of a bike. I thought of the times I'd struggled to climb even the smallest inclines. And I knew I had to try. I took a deep breath, gripped the handlebars tightly, and started pedaling. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but I kept going. Slowly but surely, I made my way up the hill. The world tilted beneath me. The wind whipped past my ears. And then, I reached the top. The view from up there was breathtaking. I could see the whole town spread out. Beneath me, the houses like tiny toy blocks, the cars like little beetles crawling along the roads. I felt a sense of accomplishment, a surge of pride. I had conquered the hill. But, of course, what goes up must come down. And going down, well, that was a whole different story. I remember the wind rushing past me, the ground blurring beneath my wheels. The speed was exhilarating, terrifying. I squeezed the brakes, but they weren't working as well as they should have. I was going too fast. Panic started to set in. I didn't know what to do. Then, I remembered something. My dad had told me. If your brakes fail, he'd said, steer into the grass. So, that's exactly what I did. I swerved off the road and onto the grassy verge. The bike bumped and jolted, but I managed to slow down. Finally, I came to a stop, a little shaken, but otherwise unharmed. I sat there for a moment, catching my breath, my heart still pounding in my chest. I had almost crashed. Looking back now, it's funny. But at the time, it was terrifying. It was a lesson learned, a reminder that even the greatest adventures can have unexpected twists and turns. But that's the thing about childhood, isn't it? It's a time of exploration, of discovery, of pushing boundaries. And sometimes, that means taking risks, making mistakes, and learning from them. That shiny red bicycle wasn't just a mode of transportation. It was a symbol of freedom, of independence, of the endless possibilities that lay before me. It was the key to a whole new world. And that, my friend, is the story of the time I got a new bicycle. It wasn't just a bike, you see? It was a whole new beginning. So, what do you think? Pretty epic, right? I bet you have a story like that too, don't you? Maybe we can swap another time, over another cuppa. Okay, so, picture this. It's a Tuesday. Not just any Tuesday, mind you. The kind of Tuesday where the universe decides to test your mettle. A Tuesday custom made for shenanigans. And it all started because I didn't have my coffee. Now, I'm not usually that person, you know? The one who transforms into a grumpy goblin without their caffeine fix. I like to think I'm reasonably pleasant even before my first cup. But this particular Tuesday? Oh honey, it was a different story altogether. My morning usually starts with the blissful aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The whirring of the grinder is my alarm clock's backup singer, a gentle hum that promises warmth and energy. But that morning, silence. Deafening, unsettling silence. I stumbled into the kitchen, still half asleep, my hand reaching for the familiar coffee pot. Empty. Utterly, tragically empty. My brain, still fuzzy with sleep, struggled to process this information. Empty? How could it be empty? I distinctly remember filling it with water the night before. I remember scooping the coffee grounds, that rich, dark roast that usually fills my kitchen with the promise of a good day. Had I forgotten to turn it on? A wave of panic, mild but definitely present, washed over me. I fumbled for the switch, a sliver of hope flickering in my chest. Nope. Stone cold. My internal monologue started to sound a bit like a frantic squirrel. No coffee. No coffee. What to do? Think. Now, I could have just made another pot. Logical, right? But here's the thing. I was running late. Like, really late. I had a crucial presentation that morning, one I'd been prepping for weeks. And the thought of facing my boss, my colleagues, and gasped potential clients without that magical elixir of alertness? It was terrifying. Okay, I muttered to myself, Plan B. Plan B involved a frantic search for instant coffee granules, tucked away in the back of my pantry, behind a fortress of forgotten spices and half-eaten bags of chips. You know, the kind of emergency stash you keep for the apocalypse. This felt pretty apocalyptic at the time, let me tell you. I finally unearthed the dusty jar, ripped open the lid, and empty. The universe was clearly having a good laugh at my expense. At this point, I considered just crawling back into bed and pulling the covers over my head. But responsibility, that pesky little voice, reminded me of the presentation. So, with a deep sigh and a growing sense of impending doom, I left for work, caffeine-less and feeling like I was walking through quicksand. The usually vibrant colors of my neighborhood seemed muted, dull. The cheerful chirping of the birds sounded like mocking laughter. Even the friendly barista at my usual coffee shop, bless his heart, seemed to radiate an aura of caffeinated smugness as he handed me my usual order, a large latte with an extra shot. Rough morning? He asked, a twinkle in his eye. I just groaned. The drive to work felt like an eternity. My focus was scattered, to say the least. I caught myself zoning out at red lights, staring blankly at the cars ahead. At one point, I almost missed my exit, jolted back to reality by the frantic honking of the car behind me. Sorry, I mouthed, my heart pounding in my chest. This was not going well. Arriving at the office, I felt like a zombie in a business suit. My head throbbed, my eyes were dry, and my stomach growled in protest against the lack of its usual morning fuel. I stumbled through my presentation prep, fumbling with my notes and struggling to remember key points. The words on the screen seemed to swim before my eyes. This is a disaster, I whispered, feeling a wave of self-pity wash over me. Then, something unexpected happened. Just as I was about to give up, to call in sick and hide under my desk until the caffeine withdrawal subsided, my colleague, Sarah, walked in. Now, Sarah is one of those people who radiates sunshine and good vibes. She's the office optimist, the one who always has a kind word and a ready smile. And on this particular morning, she was a lifesaver. "You look a bit pale," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Everything okay?" I spilled the whole sorry saga, the empty coffee pot, the missing instant granules, the near-miss car accident. She listened patiently, nodding sympathetically. And then, guess what she did? She pulled out a thermos from her bag. "I made extra," she said, a warm smile spreading across her face. "It's not your usual fancy brew, but it's something. That thermos of coffee, let me tell you, was the most beautiful sight I'd seen all day. The aroma alone was enough to revive me. It wasn't my usual meticulously crafted pour-over, but it was warm, it was caffeinated, and it was a gesture of pure kindness that filled me with a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature of the liquid. And you know what? The presentation went great. Better than great, actually. I felt energized, focused, and surprisingly eloquent. Maybe it was the coffee, maybe it was Sarah's kindness, or maybe it was the sheer relief of surviving a morning without my usual ritual. Whatever it was, I nailed it. Later that day, reflecting on the morning's chaos, I realized something important. We often get so caught up in our routines, our little rituals, that we forget how adaptable we are. We forget that we can handle the unexpected, the curveballs that life throws our way. We forget the power of small acts of kindness, the way a simple gesture can turn a terrible day around. That morning without coffee, as awful as it felt at the time, taught me a valuable lesson. It reminded me to appreciate the little things, the simple comforts that we often take for granted. It reminded me of the importance of connection, of the power of human kindness. And it reminded me that even on the toughest days, even when the universe seems determined to test you, there's always a little bit of sunshine to be found, sometimes in the most unexpected places, like in a thermos of coffee offered by a kind colleague. So, the next time you find yourself facing a morning without coffee, or any other little disruption in your usual routine, take a deep breath. Remember my story. Remember Sarah. And remember that you are stronger and more resilient than you think. You might even surprise yourself. Who knows? You might even discover a hidden strength, a new perspective, a newfound appreciation for the simple act of brewing a pot of coffee. And if all else fails, find your Sarah. We all need a Sarah in our lives. You know what I mean? Hey amazing learners, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But remember, sometimes, one more step is all it takes to reach your goal. Think about it. Each word you learn, each sentence you practice, it's all a step forward. And even small steps add up to big progress, building your confidence and bringing you closer to fluency. You've got this. And you know what? There's this simple trick I've found super helpful debating in front of the mirror. I know, it sounds a little silly, but hear me out. Imagine you're discussing your favorite movie while cooking dinner or arguing the merits of pineapple on pizza during your morning walk. Personally, I'm pro-pineapple. It's a fun, easy way to practice speaking without the pressure of an audience, and it helps you get comfortable hearing your own voice in English. Honestly, it feels like magic. Asking for help politely, I've found, is another key. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? It's totally normal. We've all been there. Don't be shy to ask native speakers or fellow learners to clarify something or help you with a tricky phrase. It's a sign of strength, not weakness, and it shows you're actively engaged in your learning journey. Speaking of practice, what's your go-to topic for speaking practice? I remember once I spent a whole afternoon talking to myself, and the mirror, about the pros and cons of having a pet goldfish. You will not believe what happened next. My neighbor overheard me and we ended up having a fascinating conversation about aquatic life. So, tell me, what sparks your English conversations? Share in the comments below. I can't wait to hear your stories. Okay, so, you are never going to believe what happened to me the other day. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing, but also hilarious, and I just have to tell someone. You're the only one I can trust with this, okay? Promise not to laugh too much? It all started with a sneeze. A really big, earth-shattering, room-rattling sneeze. The kind that makes your eyes water and your ears pop. You know the kind, right? Anyway, I'm in my living room, mid-sneeze, when I happen to glance upwards. And that's when I saw it. The horror. The absolute, unmitigated horror. My ceiling fan. My poor, neglected ceiling fan. It was, well, it wasn't a fan anymore. It was more like a furry, gray, dust bunny-encrusted thing. I mean, honestly, it looked like a family of dust bunnies had moved in, had a few generations, built a civilization, and declared the fan blades their ancestral homeland. I'm not exaggerating. There were layers. Thick, woolly layers. It was impressive in a disgusting kind of way. How had I not noticed this before? I mean, I look at the ceiling fan all the time. Don't you? Maybe not. Maybe I'm the weird one. Anyway, right then and there, in the aftermath of my epic sneeze, I knew. I knew this was it. This was the day. The day I had to confront the monster lurking above my head. The day I had to clean the ceiling fan. Now, I'm not exactly known for my cleaning prowess. Let's just say, cleaning isn't at the top of my fun weekend activities list. But this was beyond just a little dusty. This was a biohazard. A fluffy, gray biohazard spinning menacingly above my head. So, armed with a feather duster, like that was going to do anything. A stepladder, slightly more practical, an old pillowcase, genius, I know, and a healthy dose of dread. I embarked on my quest. First, the feather duster. Oh, the naivete. One swipe, and a small dust bunny avalanche cascaded down onto my head. I coughed, spluttered, and abandoned that plan faster than you can say, dust mite. Right, pillowcase time. The plan was simple. Encase the fan blade in the pillowcase, and slide it off, trapping all the dust inside. Sounds good in theory, right? In practice? Not so much. The first blade went, okay. I mean, the pillowcase got covered in dust, obviously, and I ended up with a face full of fluff. But most of the dust did end up inside the pillowcase. Progress. I was feeling pretty good about myself. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Guess what happened next? Yep. Hubris. Pure, unadulterated hubris. On the second blade, the pillowcase slipped. And the dust? Oh, the dust. It didn't just fall. It exploded. It was like a dust bomb had detonated directly over my head. I swear, I could taste dust. I could feel it in my hair, in my ears, between my toes. It was everywhere. I looked like a chimney sweep who'd just wrestled a particularly dusty yeti. In my living room? Forget about it. It looked like a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie where the apocalypse was caused by, you guessed it, dust. I stood there for a moment, covered in dust, surrounded by dust, breathing dust, contemplating my life choices. Why? Why had I disturbed the delicate ecosystem of the ceiling fan? Why hadn't I just lived in blissful ignorance? But then, a thought. I had come too far. I had to finish what I started. I couldn't just live in a dust-filled dystopia forever. Could I? So, I persevered. I abandoned the pillowcase strategy, clearly flawed, and opted for a damp cloth. Slowly, painstakingly, I wiped each blade, watching with grim satisfaction as the gray grime transferred from fan to cloth. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fun, but it was working. And you know what? As the dust settled, literally, I started to notice something. The room was brighter. The air felt cleaner. The fan, freed from its dusty shackles, spun with newfound grace and elegance. It was like a weight had been lifted, not just from the fan blades, but from my soul. It's funny, isn't it? How something as small as cleaning a ceiling fan can be such a cathartic experience? I mean, it was just a chore, right? But it felt like more than that. It felt like I had conquered a small, fluffy Everest. I had faced my fears of dust and emerged victorious. I felt a strange sense of accomplishment. And, okay, maybe just a little bit smug. So, there you have it. The saga of the ceiling fan cleaning. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't easy, but it was an experience. A story to tell. A reminder that sometimes the biggest challenges come in the smallest, fluffiest packages. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go buy a new pillowcase. And maybe invest in one of those fancy extendable duster things. You know, the ones that look like fluffy ostriches on a stick? I've seen them advertised. They might just be the solution to my next dust bunny apocalypse. Although, hopefully, that won't be for a while. I've earned a break, don't you think? Right? Okay, good. Just checking. So, what do you think? Pretty epic, huh? Don't worry, I'll get you back for laughing. I know you're ceiling fan. Just kidding. Mostly. Okay, so, you are never going to believe what happened to me the other day. I went for a walk in the woods, right? Sounds simple enough. I do it all the time. It's my thing, my little escape. But this walk was different. Epic, even. Well, epic in a slightly embarrassing, slightly terrifying, and ultimately, incredibly beautiful kind of way. Grab your tea, because this is a long one. It all started with a craving for quiet. You know those days, right? When the world feels like it's buzzing a little too loudly. My phone was pinging non-stop, my to-do list was a mile long, and I just needed to breathe. So, I threw on my comfiest sweater, the oversized, ridiculously soft one that my grandma knitted, grabbed my trusty walking boots, and headed for the woods behind my house. These woods? They're practically my second home. I've explored every trail, climbed every climbable tree, don't judge, and I swear, I know the birds by name. Okay, maybe not by name, but I recognize their songs. Anyway, I was feeling pretty confident, strolling along my usual path, the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves, the air crisp and smelling like pine needles and damp earth. Pure bliss. I was lost in my thoughts, replaying a silly conversation I'd had earlier when I spotted it, a little deer path, barely visible, branching off the main trail. I'd never noticed it before. Had it always been there? Was it new? Curiosity, as it always does, got the better of me. Just a quick peek, I told myself, stepping onto the narrow, leaf-strewn path. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. The deeper I went, the more enchanted the woods became. The trees grew taller, their branches intertwining overhead, creating a cathedral of green. The sunlight became a hazy, ethereal glow. It felt otherworldly, like I'd stepped into a fairy tale. I was half expecting to see a gnome pop out from behind a mushroom. I kept walking, further and further, captivated by the beauty of it all. I was snapping pictures like a crazy person, you know, the kind of pictures you take when you're absolutely sure you've discovered some secret, magical place that no one else knows about. I even tried a little time-lapse video, panning across the mossy undergrowth and the towering trees. Aspiring nature filmmaker, that's me. Then, I heard it. A low rumble. At first, I thought it was my stomach. I'd skipped lunch, and let's be honest, my stomach has a mind of its own. But the rumbling grew louder, deeper. And then, a crack of thunder. Wait, what? I looked up at the sky, now a bruised purple, and realized, with a sinking feeling, that I'd been so engrossed in my little adventure, I hadn't noticed the gathering storm clouds. And then, the heavens opened. Rain, and I mean torrential rain, came pouring down. I scrambled for my phone to check the weather app. No signal, of course. Typical. I'd wandered so far off the beaten path, I was practically in the wilderness. So there I was, soaked to the bone, lost, and with the distinct feeling that this whimsical woodland walk was about to become a survival story. Did I mention I'd also forgotten my water bottle? Rookie mistake, I know. I started running, blindly following the winding path, slipping and sliding on the muddy ground. Branches whipped at my face, the rain stinging my eyes. I was convinced I was going to end up like that guy in Into the Wild, minus the inspiring journey of self-discovery. Then, just when I was about to give up and build a makeshift shelter out of ferns and my shattered hopes, I saw it. A flicker of light through the trees. Civilization. Or at least, someone's porch light. I practically flew towards it, emerging from the woods like a swamp creature, hair plastered to my face, clothes dripping, looking, I imagine, like I just wrestled a bear. And guess what? The house belonged to Mrs. Higgins, the sweetest, but also the most gossipy, lady in town. She took one look at me, her eyes widening in alarm, then burst into laughter. "Oh, dearie, you look like a drowned rat," she exclaimed, ushering me inside. She wrapped me in a warm blanket, made me a cup of hot tea, bless her soul, and listened patiently as I recounted my misadventure, embellishing only slightly, of course. As I sipped my tea, the rain drumming softly against the window pane, I realized something. Getting lost, getting soaked, looking like a complete mess, it was all worth it. It was terrifying, yes, but it was also exhilarating. I'd rediscovered a sense of adventure, a childlike wonder that I thought I'd lost somewhere along the way. Mrs. Higgins, ever the pragmatist, gave me a lift home, not before offering me a Tupperware container full of her famous lasagna. "You need to fatten up, dear," she said, patting my hand. I couldn't argue with that. So, that was my walk in the woods. A little dramatic, a little chaotic, but definitely unforgettable. It reminded me that sometimes, the best adventures are the unplanned ones. The ones that push you out of your comfort zone, make you laugh at yourself, and leave you with a story to tell. And maybe, just maybe, a container of delicious lasagna. So, what do you think? Pretty wild, huh? You know what I mean? I swear, sometimes life is just stranger than fiction. Now, tell me about your week. I bet you've got some stories too. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and for spending this time with me. I really appreciate you staying connected and joining in on the conversation. I hope you found it helpful. You know, before we go, I'd love to hear what new thing you're thinking of trying next week. It's always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about and planning, plus, it's a fantastic way to practice writing and sharing in English. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss any of our daily English speaking and listening content. See you tomorrow, and remember to take good care of yourselves and keep practicing.